This might be one of the hottest topics I've had to talk about recently. Um, it was not too long ago, I was having this discussion with a couple of high level executives, and we were talking about prioritization for major projects. And one of them piped up, and I'll never forget this quote. It struck me. He said, saying yes to something, in essence, means you're saying no to something else. So when new things come in, saying no makes a difference because if you're trying to prioritize and trying to figure out what you should do next, the most important thing sometimes isn't necessarily what you say no to. Sometimes it's what you say yes to because that means you're, in essence, saying no to something else, if that makes sense. So here, let me frame it up for you with another quote. This is a quote from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs said, "People think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on, but that's not what it really means at all. It means saying no to 100 other good ideas that there are. So you have to pick carefully." I love that quote. Steve Jobs was a brilliant man, but it was so funny because he said no to plenty of good ideas. And these ideas were later capitalized on by others. But the fact that he went through a long list of no's to get to the handful of things they said yes on that changed and revolutionized the way that we use electronics today. So sometimes, as a product leader, you get asked, how should we prioritize what's in our roadmap? And this is the near universal question that has two parts. First, what should be prioritized and why? And second, what approach or framework should we use to tackle the work? And those two questions come up in every organization that I see. For product managers, prioritization is loved and hated, critical yet risky, a source of tension and frustration. No wonder it's frequently recognized as one of the hardest jobs in the world, right? Who enjoys saying no after all? I mean, I can't say it's my favorite thing to do, right? I definitely have feelings of love, hate, risk, tension, and frustration every time I find myself having to say no. What it boils down to is prioritization is a pain and a drain, but it also happens to be one of the most important decisions that a product team can make. And I would argue that this is one of Apple's strongest suits. This is something that the Apple company does very, very, very well. So if that's true, what you have to start off realizing is that there's seemingly endless number of ways to stack rank, prioritize. It's as if the founders of product management thought about making the job simultaneously as difficult and confusing as possible. Now, I'm here to tell you that's not true, right? Nobody went behind closed doors and said, let's see how tough we can really make this. But I think if it was just as simple as pick the most important outcome, focus on that feature, make sure it drives high value, and make sure you can do it in a short time with a low effort. I mean, simple, right? Insert eye roll here. It doesn't just fall into place that way. So there's lots of different ways that people do this. I know that in SAFE, they talk a lot about weighted shortest job first. Now, I'm not here to jump on the SAFE train or jump off the SAFE train, but what I am saying is sometimes weighted shortest job first becomes so confusing that there needs to be a better way. There needs to be a better way for us to reflect and ponder and figure out what we can do. So somebody might sit down and say, okay, if it comes down to saying no to something and feeling like I was disappointing someone and feeling forced to prioritize what we put on a roadmap, how would I treat my roadmap? Every meeting where I need to make a decision instead of priority starts to feel like a fight with design folks, a fight with engineers, a fight with marketing, a fight with sales. If you're in that position where even the stakeholders are fighting with you, ultimately the customers aren't getting what they want. This is all symptomatic. So if you think about it, this is the part of the conversation where I talk about having the right people in the room for the conversation. So it's one of those things where if you have the right people in the room, if you have a business analyst representing the wants, needs, whims, and desires of the end consumer, a functional analyst who represents strategically what direction we're trying to go, and a technical analyst who really deeply understands the voice of the consumer, this doesn't have to be a difficult thing, right? But if you don't have the right people in the room and you're trying to have these conversations, and you're trying to be a product owner who's omnipotent, boy, let me tell you, it can get to suck really, really fast, right? So no matter what you decide, if you were the easiest way for me to explain it, I remember this when I was coaching for an 8-year-old mixed soccer team. I mean, they were little boys, little girls, 8-year-old team, absolutely adorable. I'll never forget it, right? There were some decisions that were made that upset parents, some decisions were made that upset kids. It felt like no matter what you did, that somebody was going to be upset. Somebody was just going to disagree. Someone was going to argue their case. And every time at the end of a game, half of the people left happy because their team won, and the other half left defeated because their team lost. But if you wait for every single person to provide input and leave everyone on edge, it makes it even more difficult sometimes to make the call. So how do you get everything to simmer down so that you can actually have a constructive conversation? So sometimes it requires you to step away and decide. I mean, even if it's inside of a meeting, sometimes I'll step out of the meeting to go sit somewhere quiet, contemplate what might be best, and make a decision away from where I am. But that really upsets everybody else, right? When you do that, people are just like, "Who are you, prima donna?" Right? It's interesting to see how people react. But then I came to a gross realization, a hard realization, and it wasn't necessarily aggravating to the team that was making a decision. They just didn't understand the why behind the what. They didn't understand the why behind how we got everything arranged. So I think we need to boil it down. And you know how I love the number 3. We're going to boil it down into 3 things that you can realize, or 3 things you can do to make that decision easier. First, you need to share why you made the call and drove the decision in that direction. This is where you really are going to make the connection with the team. Second, you need to share the framework that you use to make the decision. At first, I'll be honest, I didn't specifically have one. It was more me picking, but ultimately, I landed on something that I use more often than not. And then third, the decision needed to be made in the open. I couldn't do it behind closed doors. I need to be transparent, invite some debate, and I heard another leader say this before, and it used to drive me crazy. They said that, quote, some of the greatest meetings are the one where you have minimal arguing. And I thought about it. I'm like, how about no arguing? But then I thought about it and said, well, if there's no arguing, then there's no pushback. So I get what they're trying to say. You want people who are invested. So if you can think about how you are going to invest and how you are going to touch and engage with your teams, that's going to make it really, really align better and get everything prioritized in a way that people can maximize value and get what they need out of it. So for me, when it comes to getting everything together, I keep in mind Little's Law, queuing theory, right? How do I line things up? And then what I do is I get on it and I say, all right, strategically, this is where we need to align. Value stream, this is going to provide the most value. But according to our customers, according to our end users, the ones who are using this product, this is what they need the most. And when you start making those decisions, you can start aligning things based on timelines, budget, talents. That's a talent that's available to help you build it. What value it's going to provide. And when you start doing that, that's where you're really going to see some of the things stand out to you. And I know a lot of people who go through all the different models. Okay, we're going to use RICE, that's reach, impact, confidence, and effort. Or the Kano, where we identify the pleasers, etc. Or Moscow, must have, should have, could have, and won't have. Or value versus effort, right? What I'm trying to say is don't make it a habit to get wrapped around the axle trying to pick which one works better. Just find a solution that's going to focus on the nature of the product and market that you're trying to get into, the maturity of that market, the stakeholder and customer involvement. How involved are they in this product or service? The team dynamics and the people who are building the product, the strategic goals and objectives this is going to achieve for the organization, time constraints and urgency, and of course, the end user experience. If you can get those things nailed, that's going to help you get it down. And when it comes to mastering prioritization, it should be very simple. You should always worry about the consumer's needs first, strategic needs second, and then readiness and technology awareness third. And if you can do that as your primary, secondary, and tertiary sort, that's going to help you really get things hammered down. All right, that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.